Welcome back to Heroic Medicine podcast. This is part 2 of the journey for Diago with Hayley, his beautiful wife, that's sharing the story. Something that's very vulnerable and open, and very kind of her to come on here and discuss everything that's happened through her life. So we're going to dive into the rest of the story now, and I hope you enjoy listening. Okay, Hayley, so you had us up to the part where his symptoms had started to progress. NDIS was not amazing, but you needed all the equipment, the wheelchair, the walker, all that sort of stuff, the supportive equipment, help with the bathroom, all that sort of stuff. So do you want to take off from where we left it last time?
Yeah. So, I think we were just starting to realise, I had NDIS for maybe, I guess 2 years, but we didn't really use them because it was just so many loopholes, and where we lived more rural, so it was really hard to actually get support and services out there as well. So it was, even though you might have been, you've been approved for this amount of money, you need to prove why you need it and all the things. So, but obviously coming to this point where he's declining really fast, you soon realise we really need this. We need this quickly. So we needed a hospital bed and a wheelchair and slings and things to get him in and out of the shower. And
so how do you organise all this?
So you've got NDIS is really hard. It's really hard to navigate. You have a LAC, which is someone you can contact, and then you could have a plan manager, which deals with the fund side of things, and there's all these fancy names. And I know people you can cull it right down, but I don't know whether we just got a bad lot, a bad management group. But I mean, in saying that, we many people, I've heard many stories say the same thing. It's just really hard to navigate. And I think one thing that put us even further back was just our location too, because it's just, getting the support team that would come out, deliveries to come out for say, it's just Bow Desert, what? No, we don't want to go out there. It's just one hit after another. But what I did come across in this time frame, which is, very last minute, and I wish that I had it prior, was this foundation called Peace of Mind Foundation, and they just deal with brain cancer. So they're a foundation put together for families with brain cancer, and they have an advocacy section in that foundation, so you get a direct link to them. You put in an application type thing, you put in your information, someone will call you, it's really fast. And Fiona there, she took over for me, and it was life-changing. She knew the ins and outs of Centrelink, she knew the ins and outs of NDIS, because obviously that's what she did. She did that as a full-time job for many families. So I soon learnt, Hayley, you're not the only one, this is very common. And yeah, so she took over and handled a lot and got me new support workers and new support teams and all the things, because mine was just running it was a mess. It was one mess after another. So she kind of got all that in line. It's kind of that person that's really firm that you need, that really one that wants to push and knows. And also, backstory to her is her husband was also passing from brain cancer. So he ended up passing, I don't know exactly, a month, I think, prior to Diago. So there's a little bit of history there, but she knew, so she understood it. So yeah, that was a bit hard, but she was amazing. So yeah, I definitely recommend that to anyone in Australia, and it's Australia, nationwide.
What was it called?
Peace of Mind Foundation, and it's a free support, and just amazing. They know the ins and outs of all the things that you need, and there's so much paperwork that goes beyond this. And when I was Diego's sole carer without family, and I had the 4 kids, my brain is just mush. By this time, like I spoke before, I was quite unwell. So my mum was doing the driving to the hospitals and the appointments, because I just couldn't even drive him. So it was pretty horrific and hard for me to have to not be there and be his support person, and my mum have to do it, and he's declining really fast. But
what were your symptoms at the time?
I had just really bad brain fog and really bad vertigo, I guess you would say, and unbalanced. My brain, I had started with a lot of pressure, and then it just continued. So I had that vertigo for 12 months really. And it even still flares a little bit, but yeah, mainly, and brain fog like I've never experienced, and almost my nervous system was in a freeze response. I'd find myself just standing blank in the kitchen, I couldn't move forward.
Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, I was just, and this is all new for me. I'm thinking in my head, I'm I've just done 3 years of this. Why am I breaking now? You can do this. Nothing.
But he's declining. It's
so
happening in front of you right now.
I think so. And I think, this would be January, February, And December was when they were horrific to me in the hospital, and I spoke about how I thought they were going to kill him, and I think that moment really
tipping point.
Broke it. I even said it out loud. You know, when you're just like, they've broken me. Like, I came home and I was like, I want to talk about it because this isn't okay, but I was scared that they were going to come after me, like for defamation or whatever, because it was big. They couldn't speak to me like that, and I think I remember saying out loud, they've broken me. Like, I'm done. I can't fight them any longer. Like, I've put 3 years of a fight of like trying to, and it's not about saving his life, it's just about fighting for them to care. It's like, whether we went to Charlie or we went to them and they had surgery, whether he was going to pass anyway, because the statistics of brain cancer are horrific. I wasn't fighting for someone to save him, and I wasn't fighting for them to create a miracle. I was just fighting them to actually show that they care and to actually like give him a scan regardless of what surgeon we went to. So I think they shattered me. And I think the following on of that and him declining and me realizing without having that verbal, yes, he's full of cancer, I knew in my being that it was. And I think sitting there and laying next to him every night, knowing he's dying, just knowing no one's listening to me, was a lot on me, and I couldn't even tell him, because when I showed him a study of the cancer that can spread down his spine, I showed him one night, I'm like, look, Diago, like, because we spoke about everything, but obviously he had changed a lot. And I said, look, I found the studies, like, it's not in my head. And he cried. He just cried. And that's when I realized I can't even speak to him about it anymore, because I don't even know how he's feeling, especially since that last surgery. Everything's taken so literally that I could never really understand how he was feeling inside. So that was another pressure that I had to like hold in. I didn't have friends or family or anyone. Like, I remember reaching out to one friend, and she was like, she just even said to me, like, well, I thought she was a friend at the time, but I remember her saying to me, if this if he got hit by a car, you'd be surrounded by support right now, but this has just been too long. And it hit me, because I was like, you know what, she's right. Like, she's cruel, but she's right. And that's what I felt. I felt like it's been 3 years, people are processing the fact that he's going to die, he has brain cancer, but I'm over here living in the present, like, even though at that point, at the end, I knew this is it, but leading up, you're still living in the everyday. Like, you're living so present that you don't get to think about the death. I don't know, you like, just get through this day. Like, there's nothing, you physically can't think about the future and the fact that, oh my gosh, he's going to die.
Do you think you had gone numb by this point?
I think so. And I think I was just so unwell. Like, I can't even describe the way I felt and how my body felt. So I had my own scary symptoms. And then I had him deteriorating really fast. And then I still had the 4 kids. And I had my mum out, who wasn't coping either at the time.
Oh, yeah.
She just, because we didn't see much of her. So for her to come out was a big deal. And for her to be all of a sudden thrown into 4 kids, me unwell and Diago unwell.
Yeah. It
was a lot for her. And the kids were not the best either, because of the changes in the house. So I think that was where I finished it last time, was that Diago had become quite verbally aggressive. So that made a big shift in the house, a really big shift. It was really hard to navigate that with the little ones, because anyone that knew Diago knew that he was so kind, so gentle, so hands-on, loved them to death, and showed it. So I think for him to then be starting to, swear at them, he would start telling them to F off if they came up to him. And especially Luna, who was 8 at the time, she just couldn't understand. And then this ended up escalating into like fights over the dinner table, and you're just looking at your husband going, this isn't him, but he's arguing back with an 8-year-old and telling her to F off, and she's like, Dad, you're my dad, what are you doing to me? And I think it was horrific to watch. And I think my mum had to sit back and watch it. I had to, and I remember this one time, and it's going to sound horrific, it's going to sound really, really mean, but I remember standing in my kitchen with Mum, and it got so bad that I was just like, can they just take him? Like, can they just take him by a heart attack? Like, I can't. If this is the beginning, because I didn't know how long we had and what was going on, I was just like, if this is it, I don't know how much I can take and how much these kids can take, because it's not him. You're like looking through him, but it's not. He's there, but it's, deep down that this isn't what he wanted, and you knew deep down he would never speak to any of us like that. He was never remotely ever close. So I think that definitely done some damage. But I think at this point I realised I need support and I need help.
Because I'll interrupt for 1 second. I know how much you had been investing into Diago. Like,
Yeah.
you came in the clinic I was practicing at, which is cancer clinic.
Yeah.
You know, you'd been trying to get in with there. I tried to make calls to get you in. Like,
Yes,
you know,
that's
we got
right.
you on the protocol. You spent a shitload of money on
yeah.
the supplements, all the things to get you in. We did some testing, you know, and in my head I was like, obviously I wasn't going to say that to you, but I started feeling like the shift needs to change from him to you now.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and I started to feel that too.
And I think we could both feel that, and when we were having these conversations, but you know,
how do you say it? You know,
you don't say.
And how do you drop your
from him.
husband? Like, that's the biggest thing.
That you know, that protocol of supplements, that, you know, would have been over $1,000.
Yeah.
The testing,
and it's not like it was just that. It's like I've had 3 years. Like, I don't know. I should count it up. Like, I think it would be about $350,000.
And of course, you're going to do it. Of course, but at that point, it's your health was so important.
Yeah, I was declining fast, and I was like, he needs me. If he needs me now.
Yeah.
And the kids need me right now. And there's no backup. There's no like.
This is where you felt that real lack of palliative.
100%. 100%.
Like,
what do I do? And I just knew in my heart that I couldn't put him in a palliative, because, you know, then words started coming of like, and I think I was in denial, like, you know, you can put him somewhere, you know, like there's palliative. And I think at this point we're still like, we'd only just got the news that the cancer had spread and this was happening, and that I was right. But at the same time I was like, well, how long do we have? But at the rate he was going was not good. So we ended up getting a private oncologist up on the Gold Coast that was Charlie friendly, that kind of was okay with the fact that we'd had an operation with him. And
who was that?
Keith.
Oh, Keith Harwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Up here. So we had that conversation with him and went in, and, you know, he explained us about the cancer and the spreading and all of the options. And then that's when I started seeing you as well. But yeah, I think the hardest part was just realizing I needed support, and how can that look? And I often thought, because most of my friends that I thought I had were doulas, you know, like they're in the doula field. Like, I do birth photography, and all these people are claiming to be doulas, and I thought I would have something, you know. But in this time, I guess you get tired of seeing the whole social media portrayal of what a doula does and what a doula looks after. I mean, you have a friend that lives 45 minutes from you. Her husband is dying and she's struggling, and they know how sick I was. So I think I was like, where am I going to gain support? Like, I don't have family to call in. His family are all in Argentina. I started to research, and I thought, well, maybe like a death doula. I mean, I hate that word, but like the same kind of principle. Someone that's there to hold me, someone that's there to like help with meals and not keep me afloat. And even more so, like, I don't even think I was initially looking for pre-death. I think I was, at this point, I was like, this is going to happen. I'm going to get through it. But I need something. What's going to happen after? Am I going to completely just utterly, am I even going to be able to get up off the floor? Like, I just can't picture my life without him. And I've got 4 kids, and my mum emotionally doesn't cope. You know, she can help the physical, but she's not an emotional support. So
she had very different parenting values.
Very different.
Old school.
Yeah. And I think that was very hard for us at the beginning. Like, we clashed a lot, and, you know, my kids were going through a lot, but it was a mess. So I just knew that afterwards, Mum wouldn't cut it at emotionally supporting me or the kids. And even food, you know, I still was cooking at this point. So I was like, you know, how is this going to look? So I started to look, and I started to reach out, and I think I put a post out asking if anyone could recommend, like, is this a thing? It's not something I've looked into. And all this time I hadn't even invested my energy to it, which I probably should have, but I guess you don't want to invest in the death care if you're hoping for not to come. So I did a bit of research, and I came across not many. There was literally like no options. There was a beautiful organisation starting, like, I know further down, like Sydney and that, called like Tender Funerals. I think that popped up for me at the beginning, where they do a lot of like in-home funerals, and different to your gender, like your typical funeral homes, because obviously cost came up in it. I didn't even think about this, but, you know, I was like, whoa, a funeral, like, all you hear about funerals is, you know, 10,000 plus. So I'm just like, how am I going to afford to do a funeral and then pay someone to support me afterwards? And, you know, nannies and things, it's just, it all adds up. So I ended up finding someone not local, but she's over the border in New South Wales. And I had a meeting with her, and so she does in-home funerals. So we had a meeting, because obviously there's still a bit of a distance. I think it was about 2 hours between us. And she was happy to meet and, help me navigate that. So we met up and discussed, obviously she could also see that I was there on my own with the 4 kids, and Diego was, I think she also got to see the side of Diego of being quite verbally aggressive towards the kids. And I think she could see more coming in from the outside that this is going to change, and it's changing quickly. Like, we haven't got that much time. And she basically offered her support to me and got to know the kids once a week, as I guess, so they have a familiar face for when he passes. But I soon learnt too that her main thing is these funerals. It's not the care, it's not the doulaing or anything like that. And I think I was in that haze at the beginning where that's really what I was looking for. I was looking for the post support. I thought I can get through death. What I can't get through is how am I going to get through the aftermath. So yeah, she'd come on board, got to know the kids. It was only a few before everything kind of started falling apart. Diego started declining quite quickly, and
what did that decline look like?
Well, I think from memory, like, he was already in a wheelchair, but there was still moments before that toilet incident, a bit hazy as to when came where. But I remember, like, there was times where he could stand for a second and we could, like, get a wheelchair, because we didn't have ramps. We didn't get ramp until a week before he passed away, maybe. So, like, he was in a wheelchair in our house, and, like, he couldn't go out in the yard. Like, it was just, I was sick, but I was fighting for his rights that he had left. And I'm like, he's dying. We need this, like, right now. Where do I even get a ramp? I'll pay for a ramp. But I mean, ramps are like, you're getting charged like $7,000 for ramps. Like, it's NGIS is just out of this world. So yeah, there was that, like, his decline in, like, and also he started to, like, very dementia-like. So starting to be super forgetful, like, first came eating a lot, just wanted to eat constantly. And it's like, you've just eaten, but he just, like, excessive eating, like, just food, which was fine, but it was noticeable. It was like, what's going on? You can notice that his mind was starting to shift a lot more, and very forgetful and very argumentative. So very, like, dementia, Alzheimer's types. Like, when you think of an elderly person with dementia, and they can become quite, like, fiery and, like,
it's like brain inflammation,
and, like, wanting to, like, they bite at you, and, like, it's just it was really hard. And his like, memory just was pretty much going at this point. So, like, he had his long-term memory and short-term memory, so that was really challenging. And then, fighting here and there with the kids, and then he started to get really fatigued, so really tired, so just wanting to be in bed all the time, sleeping, not wanting to get out of bed, but not necessarily, like, depressed. So, like, he wasn't speaking about much, like, you couldn't really have much of a so he wasn't, I guess, sleeping, but not really like talking about depressed thoughts. I think it's really hard to know what he was thinking. It feels like he was gone, just floating in between worlds almost, like happy in a weird way. Like, it's just, like, just oblivious.
How were the kids like?
The kids were just, I don't even know, to be honest. And I feel like my focus was so on Diego that I can't even really remember that stage of the kids. Like, they would come in and chat to him, and I remember, that's right, I remember getting some Lego at some point along the line, because I just wanted to bring them together, because the kids were just craving his attention, and they were wanting him, but he wasn't wanting them, and everything he did just annoyed the crap out of him. And I remember, like, I'm going to get some Lego, because that's what they used to kind of connect with. And Diego was always really good with that. So I was like, got a big Lego kit, and I was like, Diego can come out in a wheelchair and they can create this Lego together. And they did do that, and it was really beautiful. Diego would go back and fall asleep, so he didn't last long. But I feel like it really was nice for the kids, because they got that connection. Kids just want you to touch them and play with them and connect with them. And I think, so she was building this thing, and she built it in, like, 2 days, and then I remember taking photos. She would go back into bed because he was lying down and he was really tired. We'd just explain to the kids. They knew, like, it's been 3 years, and they knew how this goes, the waves of fatigue, and Dad's just tired. And I was just constantly explaining that it's not the tumour. I mean, it's not Diego, it's the tumour that's changing him, and, just reminding them that this isn't him, and it would never be him when he chooses those words. And all of the things. So anyways, she would go in and show him, and, you know, he would be really good with her with that for those moments. And I remember that being really special. I think we did that twice in that 6 month period of I was just trying to find a way that they can connect, you know, because I remember before he got into a wheelchair and they were going to take them skating. They'd never been to a skate ring before. Like, they've been quite neglected when it comes to that, because they just don't have the time. Like, they were brought up in the car, and we took him to the skate ring, and we actually got 2 support workers within that 6 months, maybe like the last 4 months of his life, through NDIS. And they were like a mother-in-law and daughter, like a mother and daughter-in-law, and they ended up being so beautiful. So they got to know the kids. So like they ended up basically doing the role of watching the kids, really, like helping around the house. Well, I just got to be with Diago and be what he needed. Phone calls, all of the background stuff, and just got to be with Diago and do like a lot of... So I really remained his carer, I guess, in a lot of ways, but they kind of came in more and kind of picked up the pieces with the kids, which was beautiful. They were lovely. I was so glad to find them. I wish everyone had them from the beginning, but we didn't, and it is what it is. But anyways, they were beautiful. So we were going to go skating, and we got all the way there thinking skate ring, and it wasn't wheelchair friendly. So we couldn't. So Diago couldn't go in, and I couldn't go in. So the support workers took the girls skating, because the girls were really excited. So it was kind of like, oh, I don't want to go without Dad, but they were here and they've never been. So they took them, and I just took Diago for lunch, and we went around. But I soon realised too, like, that's just a whole nother thing, wheelchair access. Once you've got someone in a wheelchair and you've got 4 little kids, it's like, how do you navigate? That was just horrific in itself. Like, I don't even know how people do it. And I think that's a whole nother story for another time. Your car, like this space, like getting wheelchair access to like toilets. Say like I wanted to take him to the toilet, it's like, especially for people that are in wheelchairs that can't move out of their wheelchair, like they don't have the power to, like they have these big doors on them, and like you've got to get in one, you got to like, I'm pushing him, he hasn't got the strength to open the big door, so I've got to push a door, get him in, turn him around, get him back in this little crevice and then into that little crevice. And it's just, I remember how much it was on me because I was so unwell, so the kids would help too. So like it just became this little family of you just do, you know, like one opens the door, helps me in, they take Dad to the toilet. So the kids had seen it all. They always had anyway. We're very open like that, and we've been open with them the whole time. But I guess we never really had a proper conversation about death as such, because I guess you just were so focused on the everyday, took everything out of us that we weren't even thinking. But I know once we got like our death support in, they were aware that this is the person that's going to be here to help that part of the process, you know? So, like, this is coming, and what will that look like, and what are we going to do? You know, like we're talking about burying or cremation, or... So just starting those little conversations, and books about that, and books about death, and I guess it's just a gentle way of bringing it in. And because the kids are so used to the openness of it, they were probably more intrigued than they ever were scared. I wouldn't say scared is the word, but at the same time, obviously, there was tears of not wanting to lose their dad. Like,
that'd be so hard.
It really,
Can't even imagine.
It was, but at the same time, I was like, I was not numb, but I was just like in this like he needed me moment. It's really weird. It's really surreal. Like if you were to watch our life on a movie, I'm sure I would bawl my eyes out, and I could be like, how does it happen? But you just kind of get through the best you can. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. I wished the whole time, all I wished is that I had family, and I had support, and they had cousins, and I had sisters and brothers, and like I craved that, and I craved it even more so for my kids, because I thought they need this distraction, they need someone to come in and cuddle them. Like, can you hire a grandma? Like, I remember all of that. Like, that was where I was hurting a lot, was just because I knew that I neglected them, you know. And then comes towards the end, me allowing, like, we had one iPad in the house that was quite new, and I just remember Luna gravitating to it, and then me just like not even having the energy to fight her anymore. It's just like the last probably 2 weeks of his life, she just engulfed into that iPad, and it was like you could tell it was her escapism. So yeah, as far as like what his decline looked like, it was the sleeping, the less moving, the less wanting to get up, and then came the also not wanting to eat. But I think it was about 2 weeks before he passed, we got gifted a holiday. So it's one of those Dream to Live foundations, where basically, you know, you'd say what you would like, and they can kind of offer that for you in your last moments type thing. And Diago just said, I just want a holiday with the kids and his idea was to give me and the kids a break. So they ended up giving us an apartment in Surfers that had the pool on the deck, so that I didn't have to do the pool runs and, you know, all the things. So it was just, from memory, I think it would have been like 3 nights. But it was nice because, I mean, and little did I know it was perfect timing. So in this week of us going away for this little holiday, palliative care, I had palliative care come out, which is like a rural palliative care that came to my house. So we're having these conversations with how he's acting and how he's changing, and they were like, look, I think this is coming at a really perfect time. Like, you need to go. If you're going to go now. Like, they could see this is all happening. I could see. So there's a lot of, like, looking at people's eyes and, like, just having a knowing. You would know that, you know? Like, there's not much to be said. No one says, he is dying. He will die in this amount of days. It's just, it's like a knowing. And, like, I would just cry at the table. Like, I can't take this, and I can, like, it's just, they could see that I'm not coping and they're not coping. And, so I think that was happening a couple of days before we were going away on holidays. And the one thing that palliative care said to me is, you can't, like, they don't think I could do this. They, like, I don't think you're going to be able to do the death side. Brain cancer is cruel. It can get very messy and very, like, you know, he was getting verbally aggressive, but they can actually become quite physically aggressive. And, you know, obviously he's bigger than me, so there's a lot of incontinence changing. There's a lot of work that goes around brain cancer, and it all looks very different, but it's quite different from the rest as well. You know, like, he's not coherent. He's not going to be coherent. You can't have the conversations with him. And I was still breastfeeding folk who was just 2, and then I had the kids. So they were like, but at the same time I was honest with them, and I was like, what's my option? My option is, I always said that I would look after him to the end, and that's what I wanted to do. My other option is to put him in palliative care, and that's on the Gold Coast, so that's like an hour's drive. How do you drive an hour to go see your husband that's in palliative care and take your 4 kids that are wild in there? It's just not going to work. And then drive out going, could he pass when I'm not there? Like, that was never an option for me. And I remember my mum would look, like, people were just giving me that look of like, Hayley, come on. And I'm just like, I can do this. Like, I'm going to do it. However messy it gets, however hard, if I need to change him, I need to change him. Like, he's going to want me there. I could not hand him over, and I think the system did that to me. I think they were like, they lost my trust. And I think the palliative care is still that same hospital system, and how could I hand over my husband that's not there anymore into their hands to die alone? Like, it just doesn't make sense. None of it made sense to me. I don't care who told me what they could tell me. I was just like, I'm doing it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. So they said that they would support me in that, but you don't get palliative care nurses. You kind of get whatever teams are around. So, like, say, you know, you would have heard of Blue Care or all those kind of sub companies. You basically get one of them, a nurse, every day for half an hour. So they will come in and they will say, you know, what's the changes today? How's Diago today? Has anything happened today? And that's about it. Until he started medication, they would draw up some meds or sort out how much meds we needed. But it was very
pain medication.
Yeah, so it's very minimal. So when they first started, they might have got less than a week of like, how's Diago today? Not much, or like he's stopped sleeping more, or whatever the case be. And then it came to the pain meds. But what happened first is we went on that little holiday, and it was nice, but Diago really didn't leave the bed that much, and I started to see the changes, and each kid wanted to sleep with him each night, and I just had a knowing, and I was like, no, they can, like, I'll go sleep in another bed. So like Luna would sleep with him, and then Inca would sleep with him, and then Millie would sleep with him, and he would hug them, and I just knew. And I remember Inca, at this point, the kids were starting to know. So I remember Inca was struggling the most. It's going to make me cry. She just came up to me, and she's just like, I could see her crying, and she just came up to me, and she's just like, Mum, why is Dad dying? And, you know, like, she was 4, and I just, like, she just couldn't understand. Like, she just struggled. She's just like, Dad, why doesn't Dad love me? And I'm like, he does love you. He is dying, and I don't know why he's dying, baby. I don't know why this is happening to him, but he has a tumour in his brain, and, you know, all of the things that you have to explain to a 4-year-old, and just hug her. And I just held her, and I was just reminded her that he loved her. And I think one night I went in and I just said to Diago, like, and like, I never got to have that conversation with him. Like, you're dying? Like this is it, you know? Like, I never got to have that. Me and him just didn't speak about it because he just wouldn't get it. And I just remember hugging him and just saying to him, just hold her. Like, she's petrified that you're dying. Like, can you just hold her? Like, I'd have to remind him, and he just held her, and I just remember, like, bawling my eyes out, like, this poor little kid just... And then the girls would look over and they'd be like, they'd cry, and we'd all cry, and it's just... I think it was just like, they, like, especially for Inka, she just wanted to know why. Like, why is Dad dying, and what's happening, and when's he dying, and, you know, like, just those kinds of conversations. And then that would just come back up to just, you know, oh, chocolate over in the corner or whatever. But it was just, it's not like it was constantly heavy for them. It's not like it was, it's a lot. You can't say it wasn't too much, but I wouldn't say it would have been, you know, I hear people say that death is no place for kids, you know, but if I had taken them away and they couldn't see their dad, and they didn't see the dying process, and they didn't get to understand in their brains, I can't imagine how that would feel, especially later in their life. Like, Dad's just gone, and that then stems more to, like, especially when he's passing. But I think there was that. So we had the holiday. It was quite short, and I remember a support worker came to help me one of the days to take us out to go get something to eat, and he ended up taking Diago around the corner for a coffee or something, and I took the kids somewhere to kind of distract them, and which was nice. And Diago just, he'd come back and he'd be like, I don't know where I was. I didn't, like, he started to not even remember that he just went and had breakfast, or he'd stand up and be like, where am I? I'm like, don't that's another thing, he always wanted to stand, and it became me having to be the bad one, because he would just fall, and I can't pick him up, and he just wouldn't get it. And it did kind of frustrate me, because I was just like, it was like dealing with that little old person, if you think with dementia. It's like, they're so adamant, and it's like, but you can't. And you're like really kindly telling them you can't use your legs, but, you know, he was like, yes, I can. So then started to come the incontinence side. Started to notice he wasn't making it to the toilet, because he was very adamant at the beginning, I'll make the toilet myself. And those things started to change. And then I started to notice that he messed himself, and I'm like, this is all signs that it's happening quite fast. And we ended up going back home at that point, and we arrived home to the ramp. And I remember our death support said to me, I think it's time to get a hospital bed in. And one of the mornings before we left the hotel room, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I need, because especially with NDIS, how quick are we going to get this hospital bed? But because I'd had Peace of Mind Foundation, she was on it. So I was like, I need a hospital bed. I think it was on a Friday we arrived home. It's like, I need a hospital bed ASAP. And the whole reason we have a hospital bed is just for the movements of getting him in and out and rolling him, and then getting the pressure mats so that he doesn't get anything. At this point, we still didn't know how long. We never knew how long he had, but we knew things were progressing. So I could basically have our big queen bed and line up a hospital bed that could come right up low next to it. So it's like one big bed. Didn't feel like a hospital bed, but it's just for the easiness of it. And then if you need slings and all the things to get him in and out. And so we ordered that on the Friday. It was there by Monday, which was so refreshing. So that came in, went in, and he just continually started to decline. So I remember we got home from our holiday, and I think I posted it for anyone that follows me, but he couldn't walk, right? And he hadn't walked for a while on his own. And then I found him out on our patio. Like, I wheeled him up our ramp, got him inside, and I came out and I found him on our patio cutting my thyme hanging basket, just cutting thyme and cutting the lemons. And I was like, Diago, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just making the lemon grow in the lime. So he was taking a cutting from the lemon and putting it in the lime and like trying to graft it. And then cutting all my lime away. He's like, I don't need this. And this is like how we started to go. Like, just really like, he would do the most randomest things. And you kind of get either angry or cry or laugh. I'm like, Diago, you're standing, you're swaying. So he's swaying on the edge, and I grab him. He's like, no, I'm fine. Like, you know, like getting really angry at me. And I'm like, Diago, like, I could see the risk here of like brain bleed, you know, like you're going to go down. So I'm like trying to get the wheelchair in behind him, calling for help. And that's the kids. And then like trying to calm him down, settle him down, and take him back inside, and just be like, that's really like, play along with what he was talking about. Like, I didn't say, you know, that's not going to work. It was kind of sweet. It was kind of, because he loved the garden, and I think to see him back out in that garden for that moment when he hadn't been out in 6 months, because after that surgery that changed him, he never went back in the garden, and that was really hard. So to see him out there playing in the plants, it was kind of really sweet, but at the same time dangerous. So that kind of happened, and the bed arrived, and he just kind of started to become incontinent. So that's when he went into the bed, and changes started to happen, and we started to look for more support workers, in the sense to kind of change over from the others so I could have a bit more support in the end. And chatting with the death support about then that conversation started to come up too about what are we going to do, you know. Like, I'd spoken to Diego about before he'd like kind of had left. I'd spoke like, you know, a year ago or more. Always spoke to him about what he would want, and he always said cremated. Buried would be ideal if we had our own land and we could bury him there, but because we didn't and we rent, he just wanted to stay with us. So I said, you know, I always tried to see, was there a place he wished that his ashes could be put down, or where does he want them? And he just always said, I want to stay with you guys. And he's like, how do you feel? And I felt the same. I was fine with that. But so I knew it was going to be cremation. I wanted him to stay with us, but what I knew I didn't want was him rushed away. So what traditionally happens in a funeral is you have that phone call and they come with a body bag and stretcher and they take them out of the house. And, you know, what is he wearing there in that moment? And you're not thinking, like, you don't plan this stuff. So, you know, for a lot of people, that they're shocked. Their partner's just passed. There's someone there with a freaking body bag. And you're like, what are you going to wear? You're like looking through your cupboards going, I don't know what you want him in. And like most people are having big lavish funerals too, if you call them lavish, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a thing for a lot of people about what they want their person in and what they want in. So you don't really have the time if you're not, because we don't, as a society, we don't talk about this. No, so no one talks about it, and I wish we had, because I would have had more thought processes. This was all just coming on to me in the last minute. But I am thankful that I had found a death support person that was on board, and this is what she did.
The doula?
Yeah. So like you know, she knew the avenues, the paperwork, and what could be possible, which was so refreshing, because I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know if it was what you could do. Like, could you do this? Like, I'd never witnessed it. Haven't done much funeral. I don't have much family. So I just knew that the things that I wanted, which was I wanted him at home, and I didn't want him rushed off, and I definitely didn't want him in a body bag, and I definitely didn't want him embalmed. So I didn't know how to have him at home could be an option for how long, because a lot of people embalm. So that's like draining and filling up. I could be wrong. I don't know enough about it, but it's like, I think a lot of it could be like formaldehyde, which is toxic. And I'm just like, it goes against every part of my being. Is just, I wanted it to be as natural as possible. I mean, you can't have a natural death, and that hit me probably as soon as the driver had to go in for Diago. Like, I remember that's where I got my limit. I just broke, because I didn't want to do a medicated death. Like, naturally my instinct is like, we've held off so long, but with brain cancer there's pain, there's swelling, it's horrific. I couldn't put him through that. Like, I couldn't put him through that just because I didn't want to do a certain way, and I knew he wouldn't. But, you know, it was coming fast too. So we can't even remember where I was up to and all that. We had the holiday, he was declining, we had the hospital bed, and I remember we were getting support workers in, and one support worker was there one night with me, because obviously to roll him now is getting hard, so he's really hard to change. So incontinence wise as well, like, you almost need two of you. Like, I could do it if I had to, but it's because he couldn't move. He couldn't, like, you'd start, you know, lift your bum or lift your legs. He couldn't. So this is the decline that you start to see happen, and I'm like, you'd generally get one more support worker in with me overnight now at this point, so that they could help me roll him and change him properly. So the kids were still there, and we all slept in the queen bed, and then he slept in the hospital bed. So we all slept together all the time, and we were always there with him, chatting with him, laying with him. The girls would read a book with him, but he was kind of basically out of it, you know. Which in some ways I'm kind of grateful, because I know his fear was being in a wheelchair and being incontinent and being me having to be his carer. So I remember this one night we were changing him, and I just remember it. Luna was on the bed, like on the queen bed. It was really late at night, and I thought, you know, she's not listening too much. She was like on her iPad at the time, because she dove into that as like a protective mechanism, and I soon realised it's definitely a protective, because we were changing, and the support worker's like, okay, darling, I'm just going to roll you over, you know, because we were changing him, and it's very intimate and full on, and Luna's sitting there. I thought she was in her iPad, but she clearly wasn't. She just turned around, and she just out loud was like, he has a name. And the support worker's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, he does. It's Diago. She's like, yes, he has a name. And she just became really, and she's 8. And it actually took my breath away, because I was like, she's right. You know, she's on top of this almost more than I'm on top of this, you know, like, she's so protective of him right now, and she can see every little thing that's happening to him, and they're watching and taking in And also that's her holding responsibility for her dad. And I was like, you know, you're right. Like, I hope that he can hear her. Like, they say the last thing that goes for them is their hearing. So even though they're not there, he can hear everything. So everything remained the same. The kids were allowed, they would play. We would talk, we would chat around him. It was music was played, because obviously he liked music. So that was one instance I really knew. But then came, by this point, we're probably like less than a week left. No, just over a week left. And Luna starts to have this massive panic attack out of what felt like nowhere. Obviously not nowhere. We have her dad dying in the house. But she just couldn't breathe, hyperventilating ridiculously, came out of nowhere, couldn't stop. I don't know what's happening to my body, Mum. Something's happening to my body. And she would shake, she couldn't breathe, and I just first started the whole counting and the breathing with her and just holding her and just telling her that she'll be okay, she just needs to breathe. And we tried the breathing, that wasn't working. What did we go to from there? I think when we went in to try to shower or a bath, like it's just something to calm her, that didn't work. Nothing would work. I've never seen a panic attack like it. And then we decided to try, I think the support worker was there, she's like, why don't we try something on the TV to distract her? Turn the TV on. This was about maybe like 11 o'clock at night, and we put the TV on. Nothing was breaking it. What else did we try? We tried so many different like sensory things, just laying with her, telling her, you know, she's going to be okay, because then she would freak out, like, what's happening to my body? And my mum was there, and she was like, Hayley, call the ambulance. And I was like, I'm not calling the ambulance. My husband is literally dying any day in that room, and I'm going to call an ambulance for my daughter who's having a panic attack. I'm not calling an ambulance. She's going to be okay, like, for now. My mum just was like, what's happening? Like, I've never witnessed something so big. I call my GP in the middle of the night, which, God, I love her. And I was like, this is happening. I wouldn't normally medicate her, but what do I do? Like, I can't get her out of it. And we drove. We decided to get her in the car. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning with a support worker. Got in the car, left the others at home and Diago home. And we're like, let's just go through. What do you want? She's like, an ice cream. Like, let's just go through and get her a soft serve at Macca's, because like where we live, there's no other option. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And the whole time we're trying to distract her out the window, and she's like not breathing properly and still hyperventilating. And then she'd go like in waves. It would come up and it would go down a little bit. It would come up. It would go down a little bit. And drive through all of that. She kind of calmed a little bit, and then same thing, got back home hyperventilating. So like I gave her like a quarter of my Valium, and I was like, this has got to bring her down. And didn't even touch the sides. Another quarter down. I'm chatting to my GP, like, what do I do? Because my GP knows that we don't normally go for this kind of stuff, and she's very aware of it. I think we did try some homeopathics way back at the beginning too. I can't remember what it might have been. It might have been the I don't want to say it out loud because it might be wrong. But yes, and then eventually 2 hours later she'd calmed and she was falling asleep. And the next day I thought, gosh, she woke up same thing in a state, like just not as bad, like not like that, but just she wasn't okay. And I soon realised her nervous system is it's coming in, and mine was too. And I thought my first thing, and it might sound really woohoo, was like, this is close, like we could feel it energetically in the house, like it's like that whole looking at everyone and just knowing. And I would go in with Diago, and I, at this point, that I think it was the next night after she had the panic attack, I went in to see Diago. Like I just popped out for a second to get a drink, come back in, and Diego's like, we don't need him there. And I was like, we don't need who there? He's like, me. I'm standing at the end of the bed. We don't need two of us here. And I'm just like, the kids weren't in the bedroom, but I was just, my brain was just like, what do you mean? He's like, kill him. Kill him now. And I was like, I'm not killing anybody. You're right there. You're okay. He's like, I'm okay, but we don't need him there. That's me. And that was the first thing that he said that started to like kind of be like, okay, what's happening. And then the following one, I think I mentioned this a little bit before, but I went out to grab something, come back in, and he said, I don't want to go. And I'm like, go where? And this, mind you, he would like whisper it because he wasn't speaking. So when he would speak, it was kind of like, you were like, what? What is he saying? Like, what's going on? A lot of mumbling. And he said, I don't want to go. And I said, where are you going? And he's like, behind the starseeds. And we don't speak about starseeds. At this point, I didn't really know what a starseed was. I had a support worker out on the couch with the kids, and And then he's like, I don't want to go. You're the love of my life, but I have to go behind the starseeds, and I don't want to go. And I'm like, my brain's just going, starseeds, what's he talking about? Because I would say Diago naturally would be spiritual, but not, in no way did he practice it or research it or watch it or anything like that. So I calmed him down and stayed there, and then I went out and saw my support worker. I'm like, he's just said this to me, and I wrote it all down because I just wanted to remember it. She's like, no way. So then she's like trying to show me what star seeds were, and I was just like, all this stuff is like coming, like, I guess I still don't even know, but like they come to help us here, like
transition.
Yeah, like, no, like, I don't know. I don't want to speak about it on here because I don't know enough, and people will be like, that's not what it is. But I think I'm going to have to look it up now and put it, even if we put it on the end of this or something, or put a link in maybe like in the comments or something, because
I've never heard of it.
Like from what I heard, from what I read too, it was like people that are star seeds believe that they never belong here, and they're here to like bring good to the planet or the earth, and they don't always stay around, and sometimes it's too hard for them, like from a different realm, you know. And when I read about it, it said that often when they're here, they feel like they have this non-belonging. And Diago, from the time I met him, said he didn't belong here. He always would tell me he didn't belong here. It was like, he's like, I feel like I'm in the Truman Show. And then when he got diagnosed with a brain tumor, I was like, well, this kind of makes sense now. Like, he's had a brain tumor. But when I read about the star seeds, I was like, oh, whoa, my mind was just exploding, because one, where did he get it from? We never spoke about it. And when I read about it, I was just, my mind was just blown, because it like fit him to a T. So he kind of, and then after that he just had these mumblings, and like you could tell that he was like between two worlds is the best way to describe it. So it was definitely the most spiritual awakening thing to watch someone transition, because I feel like there was such a long period, like he fought it, he didn't want to go. So so then we had to start, you know, he was, I guess, getting worse and getting more out of it and not wanting to eat. So he didn't want to drink, didn't want to eat. That's when I kind of knew, and I knew too by this point, you never force them to eat or drink, because this is a part of the dying process. So witnessing the fact that you kind of follow their lead and don't, like, your gut wants to feed them and, you know, all of the things. But from all I learnt along the way was that, no, this is how the body goes. Like, without water and without food, it does some chemistry to the body that allows a more peaceful death than it does. Like, you're doing them an injustice to be feeding them and giving them fluid. You're just prolonging things, and, you know, then you have bloat, you have fluid, you have incontinence, you have the work. So I think it's just learning all of that along the way. So you're kind of like sitting with him, you've got the kids, you're researching, you have a death support person, and you're just trying to like get all this on board. And then came the conversation around pain, and you could clearly tell that he was in pain. So you would start to roll him over, and he would reach out in pain. So he wouldn't speak, but you could just tell by his visuals and things that, you know, this was happening. And that's when the conversation came out, when palliative care would come out, about a driver going in. So a driver's like a kind of like a massive syringe that's kind of linked into the tubes that, you know, it's fed into him over like a 24-hour period. And it's basically morphine mixed with a lot of other, like a concoction of medications. And I think that before that went in, they gave me just a few vials that I had to draw up and basically just inject him myself. They put in, I can't even remember the name, but it's just like a little, like a cannula, like a mini one or whatever. They put it in like his belly, or like it's like somewhere fatty, and I have to just inject him. And that started with just a few different things to help calm him, settle him, to stop him being jittery and pain. And then it just comes to a point where it's not cutting it. So that's when the drivers are put in, and then you're still doing the add-ons on top of the drivers. So I remember having that conversation. It was late at night, and I just cried. I was just like, this is it. Like, I didn't want to drug him. You know, like, you hear those stories of, like, I remember speaking to one of my coordinators of the support workers, and she's like, I'm like, a driver's coming, and she's like, oh my gosh, Hayley. And she was the first person that said it to me. She's like, this is it. She's like, I don't want to say it. She's like, this goes in, and normally that's it. I'm just like, it's like I knew it, but I didn't want to hear it. And at the same time, I just like didn't want to medicate him. So it's like, am I doing the right thing? And I don't have him to ask. It's like, I just want to go, do you want this? And I know he would have. I know he would have. Like, him being who he is, he would have taken it. Like, who wants to be in pain? You know, like, you want him to be comfortable and all of the things. But it was just not being able to have that conversation with him. And his consent just felt so wrong. And I didn't realize until after his death, which I can talk about, is how much that affected me. After, like, in the moment, I'm like, well, if he's in pain, we have to. Like, that's kind of, I just kept riding that wave. So they would basically came and did that, set that up for me, and then, you know, they give you the vials of morphine and the rest that you have to inject. And he was chewing through it like crazy. It was getting more and more. Like, he would still, and how you would gauge his pain is like when you had to change him or roll him, you would know the pain that he was in. And I think there's such a fine line between, like, how much is pain. Like, you're really just trying to gauge. And I had support workers there, and we're all trying to, like, understand how much is too much. And I think that part for me was traumatic after the way it went. But I also know that it meant that he wasn't in pain, and that was the best way for him, you know. But so we were doing that, and this would have started, I think it would have been about a week. So I think his dying process, if you want to call it, like, from medication, would be about 7 days. So, like, he held on. Like, every night it was like, we think this could be it. Like, this could be it. This could be it. Like, he's not speaking at this point. He's just laying. He's not conscious. So before he became fully non-conscious, he would, like, be really sleepy. But the last things he said to me was, like, I love you. Like, he would whisper them, or, like, tickle my hair like he used to. And those things are, like, what I hold on to the most. Like, at least I had that, you know, but I couldn't say to him, like, I didn't know what to say to him. When everyone's like, just talk to him, I just remember just lying there going, I love you. Like, it's all, like, I couldn't stop just saying, I just want you to know that I love you, and that I'm here, and that I'm not going anywhere. So I think from that whole week, I just held his hand, and I laid in fetal position on the bed with him. Like, the kids would come in and out, and I got a little package from someone on social media, and it came with these little love hearts that you can record. And I still remember them, like, you know how, like, you hold them down and you can record something. So, like, Inca would have it. She's like, I love you, mummy. I love you, daddy. And I remember, like, she would just go around and she'd just play it in his ear, and it was just heartbreaking. Or, like, the little ones would just sit by the bed, or the dog wouldn't leave his side, and I just didn't leave him. And it's just because you just didn't know. Like, at this point, he's now become nonverbal. He's just sleeping, right? And then, you know, their mouth dries out, so there's a lot of care that you have to do, like oral care and body care, and his whole body's still working, so you need to care for his whole body and just lay with him. And I remember, like, our last coffees that we had together, which was, like, a few days before this dying process, so it happens quite fast. It's not slow and gradual, and you don't really get, like, a lead up. It's just kind of like, bang, you know, here we are. So I just laid with him and held his hand and just kept telling him that I'm here and that I love him, and we just played music, and life to some degree just, I guess, would have sounded quite normal for him, except the fact that, like, overnight and things, like, say if his thing was to fall out, like his I don't even know the name of it, but, like, the cannula type thing was to fall out. PICC line was to, like, fall out or anything. What do? You're in the middle of somewhere that doesn't have any access. So you call your palliative care, then they refer you to somebody else, and you're in the middle of the night, and they're, like, giving you a DY kit. So you literally get a kit that is literally a piece of paper that has DIY. You get delivered a box full of syringes and all the things that you need, these PICC lines, all the things. And then you get given vials from, like, the morphine and all the rest of it, which is, it's not really handled the best way, I don't think, because there's no, like, acknowledgement of these Class A drugs. I remember before we got into the process of needing these meds, they were like, it's going to come a time where we're going to give you a lockable box, and then your medication's going to go in your lockable box, because these drugs are, you know, the kids and all of the things. But then when it happened, there ain't no lockable box. We are drawing them up on my bed, on the floor, on the windowsill. We're talking, like, hundreds. Like, it was a lot. And one night it fell out, and I remember going, all right, what do we do? So we had a support worker there who was a nurse, used to be a nurse, but is now operating as a support worker. She's not technically legally allowed to do anything because she is not there as a nurse. So she's like, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing it because I'm legally not allowed to do it. I was the only person that was allowed to do anything like that to him, being his wife, even though I have no training. So you're looking at this, like, DIY thing of how to put this PICC line in so that I can keep injecting him in the middle of the night. And it's just like all of those little things where you're like, they're failing us. Like, it was just me, a support worker, the kids, and Diago. And, you know, you can imagine, I imagine, how do the elderly do it? How do people that may be a little bit older and unsure and not so, like, have the strength that I had, like, I'm going to do it. How do they do it? How are people dying at home? Are they dying in pain?
They're probably dying in the hospital.
Yeah, or in the hospital where they're, like, therefore neglected a lot of the time.
There's a lot of neglect.
And, or if they're at home, they're left traumatized and, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's failing at in-home care. Mind you, every nurse that came out, whether it was in the middle of the night or whenever, like random nurses that came out, they were in awe that we were doing it at home. And I think being out where we were, a few people do it at home, death at home, but being brain cancer, not just elderly or whatever, they were like, we need this. Like, they were like, they couldn't believe what we were doing, and they were like, we need this in-home death care, in-home, all of it. But they just don't, and they were honest. They were like, I'm sorry that we're letting you down. We just don't have the capacity. We don't have the funds. We don't have the staff. We don't have, like, anything. So that was really hard to navigate. But we did it, and, you know, so then I guess each night you wake up and you're like, well, he's still here and he's breathing. And then, you know, they warn you about, I don't know if you know much about it, but like the rattle, which is like the death rattle, they call it. Well, the rattle's like more like in their throat, in their voice. So like the noises that they make when they're breathing, it sounds like they're drowning. So it's really horrific. And a few people warn me that it could happen, and everyone's is different. It's like a gargling, and like some can be quite traumatic for some people. Like, I know my mum told me a story of her sister and said that was quite traumatic for her to remember her mum dying that way. And so I was always aware, but I warned the kids, and the kids were never scared of that kind of stuff. But he did have it, but from what everyone else told me, it was quite mild for him, really. Like, he had it there, but it wasn't extreme, as some get really extreme. So he had that. And then, yes, the hand rising, which I soon learnt is quite common within the dying realm as well, as his hands, he'd be laying there flat, sleeping out of it, but his two hands would just start to rise, and they would rise maybe just 20 centimetres at first, and then they'd go back down. Like, he was floating upwards, his body was floating, and up to me I was like, whoa, what's happening? Like, in awe of how this is. And then, you know, as each day progressed, someone said to me, the higher that his hands get is the closer that he is to dying. And literally, as he died, as he was getting closer to dying, his hands reached right up. And it's just like all those little things just make the death so much more, like, spiritual. Like, there's so much more to it than we can even understand. Like, the fact that seems to be quite common. I don't know why. I don't know really, but that was one thing that we observed. And I think also when I was there and I was observing the death at home, I did have a humbling experience of me being there with him and not letting him go, and a support worker female, and then the death support there, and we're all, one's massaging his legs, one's changing his pad or nappy. I hate using the word nappy, but what else do you call them? Incontinence aids. Like, we're all there, rubbing him, talking to him. One's giving him a foot massage. And I just remember sitting there and I'm like, I had a moment of death can be so beautiful, like birth. Like women, and how strong women are. Like, I'm not taking anything away from men at all, by all means. But, and I know the whole gender thing now, but I just personally remember, I guess, being in that birth space so much for work and just watching him. It's like, women are amazing. Like, we're caring and tending to someone that is dying, and it can actually be quite beautiful if we allow it and we spoke about it more. Like, we walk us in, and we're going to walk us out. And I think that is so powerful, but so beautiful and so magic if it's done with care. Like, death is hard, he's dying, that's really hard, but I mean, if he can have that around him, like, I can't imagine how beautiful it could be if you had big family, you know, like if there was,
like the Maoris do it.
Yes,
like,
I just
culture.
Exactly.
It's just a white man way.
I think it's just that blew my mind, and I just think of to have family, like to have his brothers and sisters and cousins and aunties, and bathing him, like, you know, it was just me to bathe him and change him, and, you know, all of the things. But if you had that support circle, I think death could look and feel and take away so much fear. Like, there's fear, we don't want anyone to die, and that's huge. I had the most biggest fear of death, and I think now that Diago's gone, I'm almost not scared. Like, it's almost like, well, I'll see him, but even if I don't see him, I've ridden it. But I think my fear is the isolation of it. I was there for him, but who's going to be there for me? And, you know, you hope that the kids have now witnessed a death like this, and you hope that's our whole idea of having a big family, was to have the family that we didn't have, you know. And I think having the kids witness that, they can then also witness how gentle it is. And when they watch, it's like watching birth, and you watch birth on TV and you're like, that's not how people birth, or it's not how people can birth, have beautiful births. It's the same with death. They're going to be like, my dad's death wasn't like that. He was still supported at home, and I never left his side, you know. So I think I did have that magical moment of just how special it can be. You know, how special you can make it, and how beautiful you can make it. I mean, it's hard, the more beautiful, the more heartbreaking, but it's like heartbreakingly beautiful. It's hard to describe. That's all in amongst, obviously, the heaviness of the rest. But yeah, and then I guess comes the time when that's it, he died, you know. Like, we had our death support there for the week, and almost like we thought it was going to be every night. And I remember the palliative care would call every day and be like, how's it going? And no one could believe that he was hanging on. And, you know, then I get met with, he just doesn't want to go, Hayley. And that just makes it harder. Like, Hayley, you need to have a conversation with him. You need to tell him it's okay to go. Like, he shouldn't, with the amount of drugs that are now circulating through his body that aren't even legal, that, like, as in, it's not normal to be going through this much medication. He should not be here. He just does not want to go. And also, this sounds really bad, I guess, when I say that he's pumped full of drugs, but I learnt a few days before he passed is that I remember the palliative care nurse calling me and asking me, because we needed so much medication to keep him under control, and she just said, had he ever been like a pot smoker in his life? And I was like, oh, a little bit as a teenager, and at home, like, no, like, not really, like, at all. And I'm thinking, like, why are they asking me this? And I almost got a little bit defensive, like, what are you trying to say, that he's a junkie? Like, where's this coming from? And she's like, well, no, she's like, but what we've learnt in the past is that people that have had THC build a resistance to, like, opioids and, like, pain medication. And that's when I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think, like, he's not really a big pot smoker. And then I'm like, hold on a minute. He just spent the last 2 to 3 years taking mega high doses of pure THC, like a paste, like an RSO paste. I mean, we spent $20,000+ on this THC. So I'm like, oh my God, Hayley, yes, of course. He's been taking, like, insane amounts of THC. She's like, oh my gosh. She's like, this is why the pain meds aren't cutting it. This is why he's needing what he needs. And so that all sunk into, like, why, because, you know, that was that whole, like, why he doesn't need this much, like, why is he needing so much to be, but that's what we learned. We learned that that amount of, like, any amount, they say any amount, even, like, people that are just pot smokers, it gives them, like, a resistance to pain meds. So that's something that I learned. So yeah, so I think we had someone there, and we all thought it was the day. Each day was the day, and it was getting close one afternoon. The sound was getting more intense, though. Like, I started to notice, and obviously he was losing weight because he hadn't eaten or drunk anything. We still had to do his mouth care and everything like that, and we had him comfortable, and the kids were all around, and our death support was needing to head out, and she had something on, and she was like, do I go, do I not? Like, this, so, like, come on, this has already been crazy. And she decided to leave, and her wheels left my driveway, and he passed away. Like, literally, her car wheels got off my driveway, and she was driving, like, the front of the house, and he passed. So, like, he started to make these movements, and obviously I never left his side. I could barely pee this whole week. So I just, like, held his hand, and I could see this movement happening, and I didn't know what was happening. And obviously I was somewhat frightened to a degree, because I was like, what's happening to him? And I was like, is he going into, like, a seizure? Like, I didn't know. So I call out for Helen, who was our other support worker, and I call the kids. And the kids all come running, jumping on the bed, and they grab him. Like, it's almost like everyone just knew. They all just jump and, like, lay there, and I'm holding his hand, and I'm looking at Helen, the support worker. I'm like, because she was a nurse, I'm like, and she had just done another brain cancer death prior to this, and I just, that look at her, like, this is it, isn't it? Because he was, like, grasping for air, and I'm just like, she's like, talk to him, Hayley. She just didn't even answer me. She's like, Hayley, just talk to him now. And I'm just like, I love you. I love you. Like, we all love you. And the girls are like, I love you, Dad. And it was just the most horrific thing to watch, I think. Like, I don't know, it felt like it went forever, but I'm sure it was really short. But I was just I just kissed him and just told him that we love him and that thank you for everything and you've been amazing and we'll see you again and all of the things, because I think I missed that step of when they said to me, Hayley, you need to speak to him. And I did. I went in and I had multiple conversations that week about I love you and it's okay to go. And that was the hardest for me. How do you tell someone it's okay to go when it's not okay to go? You know, like, you can't say, like, but I did. I remember sitting in there and just being like, it's okay, like, we love you and it's okay, you don't have to hold on, we're going to be okay, I'm going to be okay, me and the kids are going to be okay. And I'm like saying this and I don't even fucking believe it, because he knew that I had no one and he knew that we had nothing. So I think his biggest fear was leaving me with the 4 kids, you know, like, I can't even imagine how hard it would have been for him. And the fact that he didn't know he was dying, so he's lying there not knowing he's dying, like, it's so freaking hard. So we're all laying at this point around him and he just has his last breath and just kind of just, I don't know, just his body eases, I guess. And then the girls just, I think I'm in shock. And the girls just, Millie just screams. Like, I have, like, my friend took a photo of it as it was happening and I just have this photo of Millie and I just, in my brain, she's just like screaming, like, they're just like, no, like, I think it just hit them, you know, like, he's gone, like, that's it. So we just all, I had them all around me, we just all held each other next to him and laid there and watched him, I guess, and touched him, and it was just so fucking hard, so hard. But and then, like, it's like, what do you do from here, you know? And my support worker at that point had been on the phone back to the death support that had left to let her know, you know, he's gone. She eventually came back, and that's then where we kind of, you know, the kids had calmed down, they got to sit with him, they could talk to him, we could touch him, I held them, and but, you know, kids are resilient in a way that they still bounce back, you know, like, they're back in the lounge room at some point, you know, like, it does have to, that moment has to end type thing. And I remember walking out after that and just, like, looking and the sun was setting, and I just remember that too, like, that's just going to be forever in my mind of, like, I don't know, like, this, just this, like, emptiness is gone, like, this spirit has just left of, like, the house is dead, he's no longer here, you know, like, that was a week of just laying there with him and he's gone, like, this is it. And the death support came back and she was the one there that was going to help me set up a vigil to have him at home. So I planned to have him 3 nights. He ended up staying 4 nights with us. So she was the one that came in and helped. We bathed him, like, undressed him, bathed him, reclothed him.
Wow.
And then that was in the night. He passed away in the late afternoon. And so through the night we did all of that. The kids came in and rubbed some oil and helped bath him so they could see him, like, almost his naked body, like, we had him covered, but, you know, like, he was naked. So they were coming in and out as we were bathing him, and they got to touch him, and, you know, questions of, like, why is he going to go hard, like, why can't we do this, like, there was a lot of questions, but just not necessarily out of fear, out of curiosity, you know. And we got him onto his, like, back onto the bed, and so what she had was, like, a cooling plate that goes under him, which then allows him to stay home without being embalmed. Okay. So there was no smell, there was no, like, discharging, there was nothing, I don't want to use the word gross, but, you know, like, when you think of death, there was nothing scary or gross or dirty about it. I think the most for me would probably be, like, the mouth care, because obviously they're not eating or drinking, and that, like, they can get quite smelly, like, dry mouth and quite smelly, so, like, just keeping that clean and all of those kinds of things. But so she did all of that prep work, like, we helped get him onto the cooling mat, which then stayed at a temperature that basically froze him. So, like, he became quite frozen and cold, but that allowed us to not have to embalm him. And then we kept the room at a really cool temperature, and that's where we kind of set him right up next. So we still slept in the room every night. Wow. So he was then on the bed, but on a cooling thing lower than our bed. So he wasn't, like, touching our bed anymore, but we were all in the same room. And the next morning we were going to set up the candles and the flowers and make it a nice vigil for all of us. And I remember that first night of having to go in there and sleep with him and knowing that he'd passed, and that was hard. Like, I think
you slept.
Yeah, like, it was weird, but, and all the kids. But I remember Inca just naturally, I had posted that photo of, like, we had him all just prepped there, like, done the cleaning, and he's in fresh clothes, and there wasn't any candles and flowers. There was some candles, but wasn't all set up. And Inca got the little smudge stick and started smudging his body, and like her own little self it blew my mind. Like, she's 4. So Luna is the eldest, who was 8, and she was quite reserved around after he passed. Like, she could tell that she was really cautious and upset, and it was too much. And Millie was just really inquisitive. Like, she's 7 and she just wanted to ask probably more questions, and she like kind of bounces around. That's how she gets her like nervous energy out. And then Inca's just like a little sweetheart that just wants to mother him. And then Folk is just oblivious. He was just 2, so he's just like cute walking around, but kind of like, Daddy, die, Daddy, like, where's Daddy, you know, Daddy, wake up, you know, like, but not in like a upset way, just like in this weird way. And so she smudged, and then we just kind of, I think they asked Hayley, I have it on video, they're like, after they finished smudging, they're like, okay, Hayley, can you read us a book now for bed? And they wanted a book read, and they kind of went to bed. And I just remember going like, this feels really weird, and am I going to be able to handle him here? Like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, I think I was just digesting all that had happened. And the next morning I woke up feeling better and like more connected. Like, I did feel a bit like, this is really heavy, like, I want him back, like, what's going on? Like, I think I was just internalizing it. And then we started to set up the flowers. Like, we'd gotten flowers from the flower market, and then we just made like flower cozy stands. And I knew that I wanted like the beeswax candles around him, so the room smelled like poppies and beeswax candles. It was so beautiful, the smell. So like, now when I smell beeswax candles and poppies, I'm always going to be remembered of him. But we just laid them around him, and for 4 days we just kind of, in that time we painted a cardboard casket. We decided that doing it that way was better and like more eco, and then the fact that kids could also be involved in the process of painting the casket. So we did that maybe like 3 days in, they were painting the casket, which they were, I guess, happy to be involved in. It was still like, there was moments where, you know, Luna would crack it and have a meltdown and storm off, and it was just a lot of big emotions, but a lot of beautiful ones too, you know. Those 4 days were very intimate. We had no family. Like, my mum was there, but we had no family visiting. Like, that's why we decided against a funeral, because I guess that part I miss out all the time, because people are just like, what do you mean you didn't have a funeral? But we just didn't have anyone that would come. Like, we might have got the odd friend if they actually turned up, and to put and invest so much money and effort in our space after freshly passing away into a funeral just didn't feel right. I was like, it was us. We were a unit for so long. Like, having him at home allows the kids to process death in a natural way that their brains need to process, which like sight, see, smell, all of it, and time. And it just made sense for our little family. So a lot of like lighting the fire outside, a lot of speaking, a lot of touching. I took lots of videos of like Inca. She would just come in and start chiming drums over his body, and like, she was just doing her thing. And like, she would bring in little scarves, because it was winter as well, so she would bring in little scarves, and she's like, I just want to keep Daddy warm. And then they gave him like 3 or 4 of their toys they gave him, and like, they would come in and talk to him. They would say that they love him. She would say she misses him. It took Luna till the last day to come in and really sit with him and say that she loved him. Like, I think she's a little bit older, so I think it just felt really awkward for her to speak to someone that's not here. Like, 'cause she would say, he's dead. Like, she would get really angry. Like, you could tell that her anger was there. Like, why would I talk to him? He's dead. And, you know, it's just like, baby, it's okay, you're hurting, but he's here. Like, not that he's here, but like, we didn't lie to her, but it just, in reminding her that this is a part of the grieving process, and it might make her feel lighter and softer while he's here, because he's going to go, you know, tomorrow. And the process of being burnt, basically, like, we were really honest with like how the cremation works. I didn't take them, because also where he was getting cremated was in the other state, so I caught up with the idea of taking them. But I just thought, if we're going to end this on a beautiful home vigil, and we know the person that's taking him, he didn't get picked up in any funeral car or any body bag or anything like that, so having that side be so soft, I thought that was just best to leave it there, like, rather than them have that memory, you know. But they knew that was going to happen, and he was going to come back as ashes, as his bones. And so they were okay, I think. Like, they didn't seem scared. But that's kind of,
it's a very unique way of doing it.
It is,
like,
yeah.
I mean, I watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
I remember messaging you being like, hey, you're going to come for a treatment this week, and you were like, he's going, you know, I can't leave his side.
Yeah, but that shows how quick it went too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
he's here, we know he's going, but you don't know when, and then you're not really thinking, you're just trying to get through the day, because there's so many other things that entail. It's the food, the equipment that he needs, and yeah, it's very fast but slow, but full on, and that week was slow, but yeah, very intimate for us, because we just didn't have any family or anything around us, so yeah, it was quiet and intimate. So yeah, he stayed the 4 nights, and we just did our thing, and I think it was really nice for the kids to digest, and you could clearly see that, you know, Luna needed that time, because any other way would have been like, he passed that night, we wouldn't have washed him, we wouldn't have bathed him, he would have just been dead, taken away, and that's not something you want the kids to see. Well, I know for me, I didn't want the kids to, I didn't want to witness that, let alone the kids. So I think one thing in sharing all of it too for me was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm winging it, like by the minute. I didn't have an example led for me or anything. I just tried to trust my intuition and what I thought would be the best way, and what I didn't want. I just wanted people to see that death can be done different ways. We're just programmed to think we call X, Y, Z, and we follow their process, and there's a lot of money in that. It's like any other business. It's a business. It's a big business. There is more funeral places coming out now that, you know, are non-for-profit, and which I think is beautiful, and I hope they are everywhere, because people need them, because not everybody can afford it. You know, like,
you really almost, I mean, as like the doulas now are kind of coming out with that, you know, fourth trimester stay-at-home care.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've sort of brought that back, which is traditional, right? And every culture sort of around the world has a way of dying. Like, I know Jesse's African.
And
I know
then grieving
they do it,
too.
They grieve, they mourn, they lay with the body. Same, like, you know, like you're saying with the doulas, you know, bringing that aspect into it and making it more traditional, and getting rid of the disconnection we have,
100%
making it
around
clinical,
death.
because we make it so clinical, and usually we think of death in the elderly, and so maybe they are in hospital because
well, some people don't have the space to look after, like maybe for a lot of people they wouldn't have been able to look after their dying one and 4 kids, or whatever their situation is. I'm sure it's not for everybody. I'm aware that the way I did it is not for everybody, and, you know, hopefully other people have more family and support and conversations, and
I think you did it so beautifully.
Pre-plan, and, you know, like, but I think afterwards the only thing that hit me, like I said before, was I had this like overwhelming feel of guilt, and it was, did I do enough? Was it okay? Did I medicate him? He didn't know. I didn't get to have that conversation. So a lot of guilt come up for me after. Of, you know, just did I do enough?
Death do us part. You did, like, your role. You really held your vows.
It took me a while. It really took me a while to sink into being okay with how I did it. Not that I was ever, nothing I questioned. It was always like, could I have done more? Did I do it okay? Did I give him everything? Did he know? Like, and all I wanted afterwards was, I just wanted like
you wanted to know he was okay.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that to me.
To you.
I just want to know he's okay.
Yeah, everyone would ask, and I'm like, I just want to know he's okay. And it's like, he's not even here, Hayley. Like, why are you so? I'm just like, I just wanted a knowing. I just wanted a feeling. I just wanted to thank you, babe. Like, I love you, you know? Like, that would have been the ultimate, and you don't get that, so that's really hard. And same with all the signs, and it's only till now, which is like, 9 months, that I start to feel like I have some form of signs, like, but I think I was just in such a thick grieving process, because then you have the death and you have the grief, and no one talks about grief, and we in Australia don't grieve with death very well. We don't know how to grieve. And like, I was reading books afterwards going, whoa, so many other cultures have like grief and wailing ceremonies, and like it's a thing, it's a big thing, and I think it's so healthy.
Because one of our friends in school committed suicide, and he was a Maori, so we did I can't remember what they call it, but they turned their house into it as well, and there was all the wailing, like all the Maori ladies, and it was mourning, and it was, you could see the release, and I was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like that. And it's certainly not ingrained in our culture to do anything like that.
I think it's so needed. So I've learnt that. I didn't get to do that, and my grieving process was rough, as it would be regardless. But yeah, I'm still grieving. I think I'm learning that. I think no matter how long time goes, it's not going to get any easier to a degree. It just is. You know, like, he's there.
And so after he passed, after he was taken away, then what?
Well, then you basically wait. And that process was hard. Like, the communication there was a bit hard to know, like, when's he coming back? What day is he getting cremated? And that was really hard, I think, for me, being on my own, not having the best of communications and knowing, you know, this is when it's going to happen and this is when I'm going to bring him back to you. And because it's like, it's your person, you know, like, and also the fact that I thought I had pre-organised, like, that doula side of things. So, you know, my biggest fear in the beginning of all of this was, I'm going to have some help afterwards, because how am I going to get out of bed? And I saw the person I thought was helping me maybe like once or twice after, but before taking him away, and then after I didn't. So any form of doula-ish kind of support post-death that I thought I had, I didn't get. So I didn't get that. I didn't get that familiar face, or the kids didn't get that familiar face coming in and giving them a hug, or, I don't know, making a meal, or having a shared tea in the garden, you know, like, just having that. The whole reason you get someone that's like a doula or a post, and I had thought that all of this had been pre-done in emails and so forth, but I was learning along my grieving journey that what I thought and what was going to happen were two very different things, you know. So that was really challenging. But what, I guess, the positives that came, like, in saying all this whole, I guess, podcast so far has been very dark, which I feel like the majority of it is really dark, and it's not something I talk to people about because most people don't want to hear it because it's full on. But I think there is beauty, and there has been kindness in there along the way, you know, like the raising the money, like that alone for his surgery, like that's it. I could never thank those people, and that was just a huge lesson and beauty and strength in all of that, you know, having someone reach out about their car, and friends that did call, you know, finding you, like, I think in that leading up to his death and post-death, you were basically the only person, I think, that, it's going to make me emotional, like the only person I think that ever, like, spoke to me, like, you know, like, you were there as he was dying, and then you were there after he was dying, and you would have seen that just no one was there, you know, like, and I know that you have little babies and you have a business, but you were still there, you know, like, you gave me the space that I needed, and I don't even know where I would be in my own health if I didn't have that support, because I think even as I was seeing you, I got recommended to go somewhere else that was costing, like, ridiculous amounts of money, like thousands of dollars, and I didn't get anywhere. It was like, what's the point? Like, you know, you probably pre-warned me, but I was so freaking desperate, and if someone's like, hey, come here, I'm like, okay, just give me whatever I need, you know. But I love the fact that, yeah, really, obviously you were a big part of that. And then, like, my mum, which our relationship has kind of come stronger because of it. It's not amazing, but it's definitely stronger, you know. Like, I can see her for the help that she can give, you know. And the online community, I think, like social media, like, I have this, like, love-hate with social media, and I never would have thought that, you know, like, there's that, but there's been, for me and my family, and being so isolated, it's been like
connection.
Yeah, like, you feel like people care if you don't have your friends dropping in, because no one really did. Like, I saw them maybe once, you know, come and drop something, which is beautiful. Like, at that point when someone drops you a loaf or some food, or it's everything, you know. But a local church did a like a food, what do you call them? Like I'm lost for words, like a food train type thing. I wasn't a part of the church, but they still came out and dropped off meals, which was amazing, like once a week. And then there was also a meal train. Having some water. There was also a meal train that was organised by, I'm not exactly sure, it was so messy, and I think that's a hard thing at the beginning, like when it's really fresh. I'm like numb. I'm like laying out on the earth. I just laid horizontal by the fire, and I barely moved because I was still unwell, but I was pushed navigating all of this. So I think there was a beautiful food train organised, social media.
And Susanna.
So I think that was amazing. Having those first few weeks of just meals being dropped off, like anything like that, was just so important.
People cared.
I think so, you know, like that's So there is a positive. I know a lot of it seems very negative, but there is positives in amongst it. It's just situational in our situation of not having the family and all of that extra stuff. And I think a lot of people assume you do. You know, if someone's dying,
being in Bow Desert.
Yeah, like I think people think her husband's dying. She has 4 kids. Of course, she's got people there. Yeah. People think that, and if everyone's thinking that, no one's turning up. So I think there was a lot of that. You know, like people just assume that I have a big family, we'd all be there, but not everybody has that. Because all of Diego's family are in Argentina, so we did have that initial meal train. We did have some food coming in, which was just I'm forever grateful for. But the online community, that even just the messages I would get from strangers, I was just every little message. People would send me a song and I'd cry, but it was like that was my highlight of the day. Like I'm sitting there on my own, wishing that the support that I had that I had booked had turned up, but you know, I'd get random strangers messaging me, or people that can relate to death or had lost a partner, or a lot of people was like losing their parents, because I guess we're all gonna generally that goes first, right? And I remember sometimes being almost not angry, but just like it doesn't compare, you know, like, but it does. Grief is grief, you know, like, and you can't measure anyone's grief. And you know, for me, I don't have family and I'm not that close, like I don't have that closeness that I feel like I can't even compare my family's grief to say Diego's death and grief. But it's just realizing that once you know that depth of grief, we're all interconnected, and why don't we speak about it? Like I think they should speak about grief in schools. Because like seeing my kids the way they were after, like they were full of anger and full of rage and swearing. I mean, the swearing probably come from that side of Diego at the end, but nonetheless, they were just full of anger. I couldn't take them anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere. Like, I wanted that cloak where, like, you could just all wear something and people just know. Instead of, you know, you go somewhere after your partner dies and, how's your day today? And I'm like, you just want to say, shit, like, my husband's dead. But, you know, like, there's no one knows, and life just goes on. And, I mean, it's been like 9 months, but for me it feels like 9 weeks. You know, and it's only been the last month or two that I feel like I'm in my own body feeling lighter, like more human, you know, like from that vertigo and the way I was feeling, whether that was nervous system overload. And, you know, we're having a lot of other things like with the house, toxicity and stuff like that. So we are moving, and there's a lot of underground background stuff, but it's probably only been in the last month or two that I've felt.
You just stopped breastfeeding as well.
Yes.
Like that is massive.
2 weeks.
You breastfed through this whole thing.
Yeah, because I knew they said, you know, like even you said, like, you know, you're depleted, like your body's just, and I'm just like, I think losing Diego, like it just, nursing folk just gave me that connection and hug.
Yeah.
But it has come to a point now where I'm just like, you know, my body is been pushing and pushing and pushing, and I just knew that it was, and it is, because he's doing great. We haven't had any like tantrums, like there's been no fighting. He still comes home, maybe every now and then he'll be like boop, and then he's like, oh no, you know, like he's kind of got it, you know, like he still gives me hugs. And I was just saying to you earlier, like it is hard, and it is kind of another letting go process of the emotional side of it, but it was time. Perfect timing. But yeah, so many big things, and then you know, you have all the big firsts, and I'm still just trying to learn how to parent grief and anger while grieving myself.
And anger is really a cover up for the sadness.
I think so. Well, yeah, like, and I really noticed that with my eldest. She just really finally eventually got her therapy, because that's just could be another whole podcast in itself, is like, I guess, the support. Finding, you know, the whole COVID and everything like that thrown in there. It's just really hard mental health at the moment. You're not really given any support. I think people assume you do, whether that be financial, whether that be emotional support. There is no magic people that come and go, oh, your husband's died, here's this, and, you know, come see me and come do this. And like, you got to still seek it like you would any other day. You got to try and book in and get a therapist and find someone that's, I've had a few that go, look, I just don't do grief. Grief is a whole new ball game. And I'm like, okay, thank you for being honest, but where do I go?
And then availabilities, you know?
And then it sucks, but financially. Yeah. Like, it's, you know, like for me to see someone is like $250 an hour. For Luna to see someone, it's $150 an hour. That's just two of us. Yeah. You want to go weekly because you're a mess? You can't do it. What family can? You've just lost your husband. Like, it's really, really hard. But that could be another whole side issue.
Yeah, it's been a journey, right?
Still is, but
oh yeah. And so you guys, you know, I feel like the move we had spoken about, you know, moving the house, the mold, the aspects of the house. When you'd go away, you'd feel better. When you come back, you'd get sick
Yeah.
again, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously, Diego's passing their energy, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's going to be a big shift, I'm hoping.
Totally.
Yeah.
Letting go, cleansing, you know, getting a new environment that's going to be fresh for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm praying that's going to be another step in it all.
And your mum's
step
moving
forward.
with
She
you.
is. So yeah, mum's moving with us, and me and the kids, and closer to the beach and closer to the ocean, and just time to really heal, because I feel like that first 6 months is survival. Like I just felt numb, like I was in survival mode, and when you're in survival you can't really grieve, you know.
No, you hardly cried.
Yeah, like it's just like numb, you know. And I think that, or you're all cried out. You're just like there's like nothing left. Yeah, even till today, you know, like yesterday I saw you for acupuncture and I was like having such a flat day. Like I just cried. I like still had a therapist appointment and I just was like, I miss him. Like I want him back. You know, like when you realise that my life moving forward is never going to be the same, and the only way it could be is with him and with him back, because they're his kids and we're all together, and I just want a hug, you know, like I want to be held, but by him. So like bring him back. I was a mess. So some days I'm like, I might have a couple of good days, and then I have a day where I'm on the floor and I'm crying and I can't stop. You know, that's kind of where we're at, and I think the kids are the same.
You are so brave.
Thank you.
But, you know, I feel like the way you've done it has been, number one, it's been so beautiful, but I think it's been a good process for you all.
Yeah. It's hard. It's going to be hard regardless, right? But at least if you can soften it, the edges a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know what I would do to have him back, but at the same time there is a freeing in knowing that he's free too, you know, because it was hard. Brain cancer, well, cancer is just cruel. So there is that little part of me that's like, he's free, you know, like he's not in pain, he's not having to deal with his own mind and that scariness of it all, and you know, but we miss him.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey so openly, and I think, you know, I think you've helped a lot of people on the way through whatever they might be going through, you know, whether people see that, you know, maybe they're having a bad day and then they see your story and they think, wow, my life isn't that hard, you know, or whether they are losing people and, you know, they feel connected. I think the connection that you get through social media can be a good thing.
I think so.
So, you know, it's been nice to have such vulnerability really come from it all.
Yeah.
Did you say you got some
questions? Yes.
Shall we, and then
there was a lot of the same kind of questions coming up, but someone here is asking if I've had any signs that I believe are sent from him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's something I struggled for the first 6 months, is I just thought there would be signs. I just assumed there would be. But I never was getting anything, but I think I was just too thick in it all. But there has been some, I don't know if it's signs, but like knowings, like feelings, I guess, that I've had. But this is all new, so I think they're coming, you know, now that I'm more open and aware, they're coming. Does family have authority to have passed loved ones straight home, not to stay at the hospital? So this one, I think I replied to her personally too, because Diego was never at hospital, so I didn't have to have that permission of going, okay, he's passed in the hospital, can I bring him at home then and do a visual? As far as I'm aware, in Queensland you can do that.
You can, because that's, I know people that have done that.
Like you can. I know every state's a little bit different, but that is definitely something you do. You have authority, they're your person, you know, but so the answer is yes. I would say finding a good death support person to ask those kind of questions would be the better one, because I'm definitely not qualified. And how can I best support my friend? Her husband has been diagnosed with a brain tumour. I think I get this one a lot. And I think never giving up and always staying by their side. Like you know, I know I was probably a really crappy friend to, like, I had one friend that would always check in on me, and I know that sometimes I didn't reply, but she never stopped. And I'll never forget her for that. Like she wasn't pushy, she was just sending a text message. She was just offering her support, offering herself, offering her service, asking what I needed. And I mightn't have replied for 5 days straight because I was a mess, but she never stopped. And I think just knowing that someone's in your corner is everything. Obviously you have the basics, like a meal you can never go wrong with meals, financial help, hospital parking fees, a coffee, Like, if it was diagnosis, it's those things, they help. Like, they're little and they're silly, but they help. You know, like buying her a coffee just to know that you're thinking of her and she's in the hospital, or paying for parking, or... So, yeah, meals. But I think it's just, like, showing up, but really showing up and not stopping, I think, is probably the best way I can say being of support is. And then also the Brain Cancer Peace of Mind Foundation, because you said brain tumour. Like, finding good organisations that can help. But peace of mind, 100%. How would you prepare if you had known earlier? Good question. I think it unfolded how I visioned it. And I think if I had have known any earlier, maybe I would have tried to get post support or line up some form of post support. It's saying that I thought I did, but it fell through. So that's a hard one. But I think more post support, because that's been the hardest. I think as far as I would have always had him at home, I would have always done the visual. I think, 100% would be post-care, grief support, that type of thing would be. And then also financial, like you said, Sandy, like keeping, instead of just pumping all the money into Diago, it's like, hold on a minute, like what are you going to be left with? How are you going to, that kind of thing would be something that I would change or think about more. And then this person has shared, why is it that we know they are at peace but we will never be? Cancer has taken my whole family. We watch them at peace in their last moments, and how do we deal with regrets? How do you deal with regrets? That's a really hard one, I think, because you know they're at peace but we're not at peace, and it's like, how do you... And that's where I think where my regrets came in was like, for me personally, was like, did I do enough? Was I okay? Like, you just want to know that they're okay. I don't think that I personally had regrets necessarily around the death, apart from, did I do enough? But I can see what you mean. Like, maybe if you had a hospital death, or there was a death that was, you know, they're not all brain cancer. They could have been a heart attack or in a car. And then you might have regrets, because you might be like, why didn't I tell them this? Or why couldn't I have been there? Or why did I do it this way? I could have done it that way. I don't know how you deal with those, but just knowing that in the moment you did all that you could. And I mean, I don't know how horrific it would be to have it any other way, but I don't really have a magic answer for that one. That's hard. Regrets are hard. As I said, for me, it's just hoping that I did okay. And then a book list for children. So I can't list all that here, but
if you want to share, I can.
I will. And I have shared it on my social media over the times. Like, I think I have like little highlights that have like Diago in there, and there's lots of questions and things. And I think there's a lot of like overlapped questions in there, and books, and I'm always happy to get messages received on Instagram. If I can reply, I will too, with books. I can take photos of the books that I thought were amazing. I still have them at home, so that's definitely an option too. Or any questions, really.
All right.
I do get questions, but...
And if anyone wants to reach out, you're on your social media as Haddis
Amor. Yeah.
So...
Yeah. I'm open to that. We can put a little link or whatever. But I mean, people do reach out and ask me questions, and I'm totally okay with that. It's just getting back to everyone and not getting lost and stuff.
Of course.
And people are worried that it's a trigger, but if I can help someone, it's like, it stops that trigger. It's like, you know, like I like helping.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think we probably talked for, I don't know how long this podcast is, but we'll leave it there.
It could go forever. It really could.
We'll come back maybe at another point, do more, but just...
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story and being vulnerable and being so strong and brave. And I don't know if strong's the right word, because I feel like it doesn't allow you to be weak.
Yeah. You kind of got to be.
Yeah. You've just been, I don't know, it's been a journey to watch.
Yeah.
Alongside you, and I think you did it so beautifully. You know, Diago would be so happy the way you did it. So just knowing that.
I hope so. I hope
you
he's
did
proud.
everything you could.
Yeah.
So, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast episode. Obviously, it's different to anything I've ever done, because usually I'm talking about health and wellness. But I just feel like sharing, because I've obviously walked alongside Hayley through this journey, and I feel like it's something that needs to be spoken about a lot more. There's, a lot of taboo around death, and I just feel like she shares it so beautifully. Now, Hayley has been, she's had her own health issues. That's come at a cost. She's having to move because there's been mold in the house. So they are transitioning into a beautiful home up on the sunny coast where they're going to rent up in Noosa. And I just wanted to add in that if anyone feels, compelled to reach out and offer support or donate anything, that you can actually go to Hayley's daughter's Instagram page. It's Luna's Love. So LUNAS LOVE and then _ and then she actually does have like a open PayPal link there where you could make a donation, or just reaching out to her in any way, shape or form. She does feel that support that comes from the love. So yeah, just it's really nice to have this side of things spoken about on the podcast, and please share it with anyone you feel like this might support going through the same thing. It's a hard thing, but I think it needs to be shared and spoken about. Anyway guys, thanks for tuning in.